all for taking the time
Maybe everybody just move down one.
Oh.
Dan can sit
Yes. I was trying
to
not to sit near the speaker.
Are you okay?
come out to chat about solar energy, and I really appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be hosting Devon Hartman and Claremont Locally Grown Power, which is a really exciting new initiative that I'm excited about, and I thought I'd just take a minute and just sort of let you know how I got interested in this. I have 47 solar panels on the roof of this house, and on a good sunny day in the summertime I'll produce about 80 kilowatt hours of power, which is almost twice what this house uses. And I'm only using about 80% of the roof. I'm sorry, 20% of the roof, so 80% is potentially available for community power, basically. And the possibility of doing that, I've also got a Tesla Powerwall 2 battery that you're welcome to take a look at if you'd like. So I can store 13.5 kilowatt hours in that battery, which is part of the shift to renewable energy, the ability to store. And one of the things that Devon will be talking a little bit about is pumped hydro, which is a very exciting possibility and another way to use elevated water as a storage technique. In any event, I'm really pleased to be associated with this, and I'm excited about the community-based dimensions to Claremont Locally Grown Power, the technological dimensions, the job creation. I think it's where the future lies. So please interrupt me or interrupt Devon as we go through this. This is an informal discussion, really, of what is going on with this project in Claremont. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Devon.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you all for coming today. As Peter was mentioning, there really is an energy revolution happening in the world today. Some people, however, and some cities are watching it go by, and other cities and other people are capturing the opportunity. Peter is working very, very hard on capturing that opportunity. More and more people around the country, as I visit various places and see that climate change is progressing more rapidly than we ever imagined, I'm also seeing the number of people working on this and the technological and cultural solutions that are being worked on are also progressing way more rapidly than any of us ever imagined. So we have a crossroads at this point of extraordinary opportunity to solve some of the world's major problems and our community's major problems. And the only thing standing between the opportunity and realizing it in its entirety is community engagement. That's it. We know now from working in cities all across the state that cities are under-resourced, understaffed. Even the ones that want to become part of this revolution and understand the opportunity like Claremont have a hard time getting engaged, and that's why they need us to support them, to show them what the strategic opportunities are, to provide planning, and also to provide community support for their legislation to move forward. So we are really at a crossroads right now in Claremont because we have this extraordinary suite of opportunities that we're trying to address. And now what we need to do is get the momentum and the community-wide engagement to be able to access that opportunity, right? So kind of very quickly, like Peter was mentioning, we have solar, we have wind, we now have the utilities who are backing off from building new peaker plants, new energy-generating gas-fired plants. In places like Oxnard, they were voted down. The city is saying no more peaker plants in our community. You're going to have to take and re-divert that $750 million from building a gas-fired peaker plant in our community to have to spend your money on renewable energy and energy efficiency so that you can reduce the load rather than produce more energy, right? So there's some extraordinary opportunities. We have some very big players involved. One of the opportunities, of course, is that cap and trade is very viable and operative in the state of California, and the last projections are, they're all over the map, but one of the projections is that cap and trade will produce about $8 billion in revenues over the next 10 years. And 25% of all cap and trade money is earmarked to go into low to middle income disadvantaged communities. Because that's the other piece that's being left out of this energy revolution is low to middle income communities. Like anybody making less than $50,000, $60,000 a year, right? And entire cities like Pomona are bright red on the Cal Enviro screen, disadvantaged communities from an environmental perspective. So, thank you for coming. I want to make a kind of a quick summary of where we've come in the last few years around energy. Personally, just to kind of show you where I came from, in 2003, the cover article of Metropolis magazine came across my desk. I was 25 years into my profession, building what I considered to be the most beautiful, durable buildings that I could build. The cover article, the title was Architects Pollute. And I was shocked. I didn't know what that meant. How can architects pollute, right? Sure enough, looking into the article, this man named Ed Mazzaria, an architect from Chicago, had gone back in and looked at all of the energy consumption sectors in the country with respect to buildings. And it turns out that buildings use more energy than any other sector, therefore contributes more to the buildup of greenhouse gases than any other sector, even beyond transportation. And within the building sector, it's residences in the United States that actually use more energy than commercial buildings or in industry. And why is that? Because there are 130 million residences in the United States. It's a matter of scale, right? So this was shocking to me. We had been building with respect to creating a better lifestyle for our people, working out floor plans, creating beauty, creating durability, creating value. We had never considered energy. So we were building beautiful cardboard boxes that did not perform from an energy perspective. We should have been building beautiful thermoses, but we didn't know. We thought energy was free. We thought it was without consequence. You just put in more lights, you just build a bigger house, turn on the air conditioning, you're fine. Now it's a whole different story. We totally understand that we were making huge mistakes. Nowadays, you start with energy in the design. We don't think about anything until we think about energy, because energy affects every single material choice and design and orientation of that building, and the entire lifestyle and the value cycle of the entire structure going forward. So when I retired, I became very clear between 2003 and 2010 that this is what I wanted to focus on. So I decided I was going to focus on mitigating greenhouse gases in the building sector for my next iteration. So we formed CHERP. Freeman Allen and Chris Gears and I from Sustainable Claremont and the City of Claremont formed the Community Home Energy Retrofit Project back in 2010 because I realized that since buildings were the problem, I had also learned that building science had come an awful long way, and that there are people at the Department of Energy and there are people at the National Renewable Energy Labs who had solutions to these cardboard boxes that are all over our state that were built before energy codes. And then we can actually go in and retrofit buildings to make them way more comfortable than people ever imagined, lower their energy bills, increase their indoor air quality, and improve the value, and reduce their carrying costs. I mean, it was a great story. I got very excited about that story. So we started focusing on building retrofits, and now in Claremont alone, we've been working in lots of other cities, but in Claremont alone, we've retrofitted over 400 buildings, 400 residents. And now we're going to be doing them 50 at a time through the 50 Home Challenge. So in the last 7 years, we've discovered that there's a roadmap to net zero for cities, because we are now thinking citywide. It's the only way to think about energy, because there's so many pieces to this energy picture, is to think structurally and strategically on a citywide basis. So it's actually a simple way to think about it. We need three things to take a city to net zero. Number one is community engagement. You have to have communities engaged, because you cannot retrofit buildings or address the 1,000 pieces of energy if you don't have everybody thinking about this subject and taking it to their homes, taking it to their office buildings, taking it to the colleges, taking it to the city buildings, right? Second is building retrofits. We've got to retrofit every building. In fact, this state's goal is to double the energy efficiency in every single building in the state. Why is that? Because they recognize that buildings are the problem, and we have a greenhouse gas mandate in the state of California to reduce our greenhouse gases, and so we know buildings are the issue. We're also working on transportation, but buildings are the number one problem. The third piece is renewable energy, solar and wind. So once we reduce the waste in buildings, then we can produce the rest through renewable energy, right? And with renewable energy, we also get transportation, and we also get storage. And so if we have enough renewable energy, we can get electrifying our vehicles, and we can store the energy that we're producing during the daytime to be pumped back at night, and that's why we have a whole group of people here thinking about pumped hydro as a storage capacity. So we have an entire community that's thinking on a very grand scale about energy in Claremont. So that brings us to CLGP, which is the Claremont Locally Grown Power Initiative, which is a program of CHERP. 3 years ago, I was giving a lecture in San Juan Capistrano to the Sierra Club and the League of Women Voters down there, and a man walks up to me after my lecture and said, "I think we should set up a time where we can talk." He said, "I come from the technical field. I've been spending the last 15 years in renewable energy, in solar photovoltaics, and I've just created some solutions to solar PV, and I would like to deploy this in a community engagement model in a nonprofit structure, and I'm looking for a city to do that in." So I started meeting with Kent Kernahan, who's since become a very good friend. This is about 3.5 years ago now. And we started a conversation about creating the first in the country nonprofit solar PV assembly manufacturing plant, community-based. So the issue with solar, I didn't really understand it. But let's talk about solar and the potential of solar. We have an unlimited amount of energy falling on every square meter of the earth every day. And the problem right now preventing solar power from being deployed on a mass scale is twofold. Number one, technology. Technology is not yet up to speed for mass deployment. It's being held back by all kinds of complicated physical and electrical properties. Number two, the way it's being deployed currently is being deployed through investor models that are making lots and lots and lots of money for investors and for governments like China. And it's not getting down to the massing of people where we need to get. So for example, in the last 10 years of the California solar industry, the California Solar Initiative, the median income purchaser for solar panels in the entire state of California is $91,000, right? So we have our low to middle income households being entirely left out of the solar revolution. So that's where we talk now about Claremont locally grown power. It's fun to start a new enterprise when you have an unfair advantage. And in both of these cases, the technology and in the deployment mechanism, we literally have now an unfair advantage. In the last 3.5 years, I have come to understand a little bit about the technology that Kent Kernahan has invented. I've worked for the last 1.5 years with Harvey Mudd College, and we have Dick Haskell here from Harvey Mudd, working with students there who've been replicating the patent information and experiments that have led to this technology. We are now doing analysis and models, and we have created 2 prototypes that we're going to be bringing to Claremont to test at Harvey Mudd. The initial studies, the initial models of idealPV panels, which are the panels we're going to be making versus conventional panels, is that they are producing 3.5 times the amount of energy in real-world conditions than existing panels, because it solves some fundamental problems in the technology of solar panels. It's a big discussion. I invite you to Harvey Mudd to have that discussion with us when we're having those discussions.
When are those panels arriving?
My goal is to have them come in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. They're already made, they're already being tested. We need to raise another $90,000 to get them here.
Is it polyvinyl?
What's that?
PV is,
Photovoltaic.
Photovoltaic. I'm sorry. Yeah.
okay.
So these are solar panels, right? Photovoltaic. So we've got a technological disadvantage in the fact that we are now in a patented situation to deploy technology that nobody else can deploy, because he's only going to deploy it in a non-profit business model in the United States. Kent has 61 patents to his name, including in our cell phones, power control issues in our cell phones. He woke up one day and realized that every one of his patents was being monetized overseas, and he says, that's enough. I'm not going to do that anymore. It's time for us to bring back local control to local cities. I want to open this factory locally with local money, and bring back the middle-class manufacturing jobs that have been exported overseas back to our communities. So that's the business model that we're going to be deploying. We have a technology unfair advantage, and we have a business model now that is, for the first time in the United States, going to keep every single penny of profit from the manufacturing and deployment of solar PV in our local communities. We're going to build a factory. It looks like we found a place in Pomona, which means we are now going to have the opportunity to create a regional partnership with Claremont and Pomona, because that's one of the things that we've decided at Sustainable Claremont, is that CLGP is the kind of launching initiative for a whole suite of regional sustainability initiatives. And we're going to start with energy, because this one is ready to go. And we decided in Sustainable Claremont that we did not want to do it just in Claremont, but we wanted partners in the area. Pomona is a perfect partner. Pomona has factory space. So we're working with the Pomona Unified School District. It looks like we've identified a site. We're going to have another meeting about this next Friday. But here's the vision. We open a 5,000 square foot factory. We hire 200 people. Some of them are working in intellectually disabled workshops soldering wires. Because it turns out that people slightly on the spectrum love doing repetitive work every day. And they are set up, there's an operation in Montclair that's been there for 50 years that helps coordinate their clients with work like this. We're going to have classrooms in an old converted high school in Pomona, training people to do soldering, training people to do circuit board assembly, training people to do the fairly simple tasks necessary to bolt together a solar panel, and training the contractors to put the solar panels on roofs. And we are going to deploy these solar panels on the lowest income households first. So here's the vision. We have 200 local people making and installing solar panels on their neighbors' roofs. It's warranted through cap and trade money. And these panels are going to last at least twice as long as any conventional panel because of some of these fundamental heat problems that have been solved. The first goal, the first major goal, is to deploy 6,000 households at the lowest income levels first with solar panels. So right now, in Claremont, over the last 10 years, there are about 800 households with solar panels. And we intend to deploy 6,000 in 2 years. Those 6,000 solar panels will...
Solar systems.
Systems, thank you. They're actually systems of 16 panels per system on 6,000 households. The beauty about how we're going to deploy this is that the lower you are on the income level, the more savings in terms of disposable personal income that you tend to spend is higher and it's spent locally. So at the $91,000 level of a household, if you save $80 a month, it tends to go to savings or an investment that has nothing to do with local economy. At the lowest income levels, essential spending is never met. And so when you save $80 a month on a utility bill, that $80 a month will get spent on gas, food, clothing, medicine, and hopefully pizza every now and then for the family, right? So there are regional economic models that you can go through, which we have done. There are regional input-output economic models out of the Department of Economics that show that 6,000 households saving $80 a month from solar panels that is like an annuity for the next 30 years, delivering $80 a month to that household every single month, will create $6.5 million a year in disposable personal income at the lowest household levels, which will get injected directly into the local economy. That will gin up a net of $900,000 a year to local tax revenues, city tax revenues, and $5.5 million a year to the state. Right? The state is 100% committed to figuring out how to address what they call the environmental justice or the economic justice issue of the state. But so far they've been trying to meet that goal by shoveling money and giving the money away in a subsidy. What we'd like to do is use sustainable energy to create a sustainable economic model and focus on the most needy households first, which turns out to be the best way to stimulate a local economy. So that's the vision. That it's time for us, with all of the intelligence in our community, to bring together all of the potential strategic opportunities from workforce development to community engagement to hiring local workers to keeping the investments local and not using venture capital to siphon money out of our local communities and create a true energy revolution so that we could take and put half of the households under solar panels in 2 years. This is possible today, and it wasn't before. And that's not to say that we would not go through and do the last 6,000 households as well. But the first goal is to stimulate the economy, address our environmental justice issues, and get this factory off the ground. So that brings us to today. We're doing a series of coffees. We're really interested in getting this message out. We're working with the city to create a whole strategic map of how we're going to take the city to net zero, but everything really depends on us launching our own local solar manufacturing facility right here to capture all of these opportunities. Just parenthetically too, it's interesting, a nonprofit business model in working with solar is the only way we will ever compete with the Chinese business model. The Chinese business model is unfairly, from our perspective, dumping resources into their solar panels and using the entire world market. They're dumping all these cheap solar panels on the world market. Why are they doing that? Because they've decided that solar panels are a strategic industry for the survival of their country. So if China had to, they would actually ship a $1,000 bill with every solar panel, whatever it takes to lower the cost of those solar panels, to compete on the world market. That's why there are 2 lawsuits right now that have been adjudicated that say that there's an unfair trade practice, and why Suniva has sued and been upheld against Chinese dumping on the world market. Think about it this way. A nonprofit company in the United States can take advantage of investment tax credits and depreciation, can take advantage of donated materials and volunteer labor. And if we harness the energy of internal economics in our local communities, it's a 4th bonus. So we actually can compete with China because we don't even have to ship them. We're making them in our own community, and we can warranty and service them in our own communities.
How much cap and trade money are you kind of projecting we might be able to win to support this?
We're imagining about $300,000 a year in cap and trade to continue to warranty and service and make sure that all the systems are in operating condition. That's the amount right now on the carbon pricing that we'd be offsetting of the carbon that we would be owed.
Are you relying entirely on kind of defective solar panels produced elsewhere to supply your factory, or where will you get the fundamental solar panels?
Without going too much into the details of the technology, part of the technology has allowed us to, since heat is no longer a problem in the solar cells, we can now use discarded solar cells on conventional panels. And so about 50% of a solar panel is the price of the solar cell. And since donating solar cells to a nonprofit is worth more than selling them on the open market for pennies, we expect that we will be negotiating donations of the actual solar cells that we can use, which is also another recycling ability for the materials. So they don't have to be re-vaporized and reconstituted.
Is that true with the new tax code?
Yes, still. That's right. Solar investment tax credits are still viable on the in the residential market.
But the donation, getting
And
a
the,
donation.
and the donations, yes. So, this is really where we're at these days. We are at a kind of a crossroads. Dick Haskell, who had to leave, and I looked at each other about 3 months ago, and we said, okay, Harvey Mudd was getting ready to offer us a pro bono study called, it's a clinic project, to have us analyze from a third party this technology. It was going to cost $300,000 to make these prototypes available. We looked at each other and said, let's just do this. We'll figure out a way to get it done. We are now about $90,000 shy of reaching our first goal to get those panels delivered. They've already been built. We've already shipped up $150,000 up there. To get the panels built, they've been under testing for 2.5 months. Harvey Mudd has been working for 3 months to get the models generated so that they'll know what to do when the panels are delivered. In the last month, we've raised, as of last week, another $55,000. And we now need the last $90,000 in the next 2 weeks to get these panels delivered. People are donating. We have Don Gould, for example, who's on our board of advisors. He made a charitable contribution of $10,000. We have people who are pre-purchasing systems right now for $10,000. You'll get a $14,000 conventional equivalent solar system. And then with the investment tax credit, it would be $7,000 ultimately when the panels are delivered. So this would be a good faith contribution, but it would be available for a tax credit once the solar panels are installed. This is a very good deal for people of means because for the first 2 years, we're only going to deploy solar panels on the lowest income households first in Claremont. So this would be a way to get at the head of the line. The first systems that come off the line will be to put the solar systems on the people's houses who are pre-purchasing. Freeman Allen has pre-purchased a system. Joe Lyons, just as of the other day, is pre-purchasing a system. We now have a charitable contribution from the John Randolph and Dora Haynes Foundation through Dan Masmanian, who's a trustee of the foundation, from the other day. So things are building right now, and I'm going to be doing a series of coffees in the next 2 weeks to see if we can't raise that last $90,000. So that's really where we're at. I guess I have 2 asks. Number 1 is help me think through a way to continue to add to our board of advisors and to engage the entire community, meaning Claremont and Pomona. So we're now forming a core energy group in Claremont, and we're now, Jill Stark, as of last week, is heading up the formation of a core energy group in Pomona. We're going to be starting with the mayor. We're working with the superintendent of the Unified School District, working with some people from the Pomona Fairgrounds. So what we want is top leadership in both communities so that ultimately this core energy group will supervise the launching of initiatives that will really bring both of these cities into the 21st century from an energy perspective, and to help their city councils be aware of these opportunities. So I'm really looking to focus on this community engagement aspect. And we have a lot of people who are donating $10,000 and over, but I would also like a couple hundred people donating 50 or 500 or 100, because what we're trying to do is show that there's a broad community support. Because when we go back ultimately to the CPUC and we go to the California Energy Commission, and Peter was just talking about a possible grant from the National Science Foundation, there's a number of things that when we go to and write these grants, we want to show this hundreds of people and leadership from across all communities that are engaged in this. And so in the brochures you'll see there's a donation card. You can have the opportunity to look at this, fill this out. You can just call me. There's a donate button on our website. People are, some of the students are just donating, $50 or $5 for coffee. Other people are saying, I'm not going to take all those people out to dinner, and I'm just going to give you the $500. We're looking for 9 people at $10,000, or 4 at 10 and 1 at 50 to get over this next 2-week hump.
If I might, Joe Lyons, Claremont City Council. I've been on board with this project from its inception shortly after Devon's epiphany about the role he was playing in greenhouse gas emissions. And I think that for me, out the get-go, and certainly starting 3 years ago when Devon first presented this idea along with Kent, it was one of those situations that just assessing it on the surface, even if somewhat, I guess, overreaching from the first read, it became clear to me that there was no overreaching in the proposal, and there was no overreaching in the opportunities that the invention combined with the nonprofit model offered for cities across the state and across the nation. And that what is now, and what was extremely frustrating to me, was taking this message to Sacramento after the governor's claims that he was looking for innovation, he was looking for community engagement, he was looking for integrated programs that did everything that the white paper originally indicated that it could do, and by the time it got to them had been demonstrated and analyzed technically by anyone and everyone that needed to be on board to validate the claims. I was not only frustrated but infuriated by the response, which was indifference. And it over the last 3 years have attempted to again move the initiative forward. Devon and the inventor Kent have also been in Sacramento attempting to get at the head of the line, recognizing that the initiative was, that their initiative was to bring exactly what we were promising and could deliver through this proposal. I've been reluctant to jump on board because I assumed all along that there would be a vote being taken by council to accept the monies necessary to build the factory with the city council and the city being the kind of go-between between the state and a nonprofit and the private-public relationship. That didn't materialize. So I have decided that with my retirement in November, I'm not going to get a chance to vote on that. So I have come forward and again, wanting the system on my roof 3 years ago to make sure that I get one on my roof as soon as they're available. I would suggest that you consider it in the light that this has been a completely vetted and now completely proven technology that will go under further testing, and that in order to set the dominoes cascading, all that will be needed will be the investment of Claremont in the opportunity, not only to serve its own best interests, but to serve the states and the nations. And I see this opportunity being in the, unfortunately, in those nations which our president has decided that he would diminish in significance, even in those communities where a factory of this type could be built, okay, without any difficulty, and again, what I have always speculated to be the spin-offs that will come in the simplification of the technology that are going to even reduce the cost even further. So I think that from my perspective, it was a no-brainer 3 years ago. I hope that you have come to the conclusion that it's a no-brainer today to get engaged, and that with, again, the already established validation of not only the technology, but all of the other elements that Devon has mentioned. It is beyond even some, to my mind, the comprehension, when I first read it, of most of our legislators to get a hold of this. But I think that, again, once the factory is built, once that first 100 panel arrays are put on people's houses, the state will be on board to make sure that the technology gets advanced to the point where they can then utilize it to the best advantage of the stated goals of not only our own goal setting, but of the governor and his closest advisors. So I really, again, having been on board for the entire time, knowing how frustrating it has been, but now the alignment of us being with the community choice aggregate model gives us a lot of flexibility. I understand that there are members in the Padua Hills area thinking of a microgrid. Okay, all of those doors are now open. It is no longer a question of when can we even hope to achieve this. It is within our reach. The choice will be yours as to whether to go to 100% renewables or not. At somewhat of a slightly increase, that would be an incentive. But the opportunity to build our own power that will serve the Claremont community and become net zero on our own efforts and initiatives is here. It has arrived, and now it's up to us to come forward to see if we can make it a reality in Claremont. And as I said, dominoes will fall immediately upon us being the lead and demonstrating the lead in that, along with the Pomona initiative, which makes it even a stronger state appeal, giving more state appeal. So thank you, Devon, for again being persistent. And again, I think it's within reach. So please really consider seriously just getting on board now, because the future is today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Devon, I have a practical question.
Yes.
I'm Margaret Russell. I'm a neighbor and a public school teacher at Chaparral School. I guess maybe it's just being a school teacher, I'm thinking of families. It seems the linchpin is 6,000 houses in Pomona. How is that accomplished? Who's approached? If you own a house, I mean, how do you get an aggregate of 6,000 homes to do this with?
So the way we're thinking about it right now, because we've just recently, within the last few months, been thinking about Pomona as well. But the same model will apply. We're going to create a committee as a liaison between CHERP and the city. And that committee will take applications. We'll be educating the community in the opportunity and taking applications for solar panels. So we're going to identify the lowest income households, both owners and renters, because renters are being left out of this equation as well, right? A third of our households are renters, 40% actually across the country. So we want to address the renters as well, so we'll have to have a mechanism to approach the owners of those buildings. So the idea is that we will, through grants to support this from the state, because of the $5.5 million a year that it generates in revenue to the state, they're going to actually now see an economic viable opportunity for energy efficiency, right? And they've never really figured that out yet. So we're going to offer these systems for about $800 per household to the household. Wow. Right? The system. It's literally about a $14,000 system on the open market. Because it's not the sale that we're looking for, it's the freed up disposable personal income in the community that we're going after. That's where the richness and the profit center is, right? In terms of the taxes being generated. So we're imagining that there will be a liaison group between the city and CHERP who will educate and start lining up households that are possibilities. Then we will analyze those households for all kinds of structural issues, right? And then start qualifying them and doing the preparation work necessary. But we're imagining ultimately that we'll be doing about 100 installs a week. Entire neighborhoods, so we could move in with a crane and we could do entire blocks. It's the first time this kind of thing has ever been even contemplated. And what it takes is community engagement. You can't do this as a kind of a business enterprise. Everybody and every sector has to be brought together strategically to make something like this happen. And so it could get very exciting very quickly, watching entire neighborhoods going solar. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes and no, because
Yeah.
I mean, we work with people who are living hand to mouth, they're on welfare, they're on food stamps, and this is going to be part of our client base, right? So how would they scrape together $800 to do this?
It's actually a sliding scale. If there are actually people who cannot afford even the 800, then we will do it anyway, quite frankly.
I'm just thinking practically.
Yes,
How's this all
because
going to work?
the $800 is less than what they will save in 1 year on the energy. That's another way to kind of look at it, right? So there may in fact be another community-based support system could be creating a loan fund
Yeah, because it's the upfront.
for
money.
those upfront costs to be able to be paid back per month and microloans, right? A community
Yeah.
can do that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Are these net zero systems, generally speaking?
No, they are systems designed to be about 40%.
Oh,
Because we believe, of course, that we should not over-solarize, that we should leave roughly 50% to be looked at from an energy efficiency perspective as well. So whether the house has been retrofitted or not, we are going to size the system so that ultimately someone could come in and save the rest of that on the retrofit side,
efficiencies.
efficiency side.
Got it.
That's exactly right. Yes, listen.
I have two questions, Devon. This is very exciting. One of them is, you're asking us to talk to people who
Yeah.
have money to invest $10,000 ahead of time. What assurance would they have that this is actually going to happen and that it's going to happen within 2 years? Or
Perfect
what is
question.
the time scale? And the second question is, the low-income families that Margaret's talking about, the low-income families that I have worked with and that I know in Pomona and Claremont live in, they're renters, they can't afford to buy a home, they live in apartment complexes like Claremont Village Apartments or the trailer park
Right.
on Foothill. Why are you not considering working with, there's a new owner coming into Claremont Village Apartments and willing to put $55 million into renovating it? Wouldn't it be more efficient to start with apartment complexes where low-income people live? And then you're working with one owner, but you can reach 300 families in one shot if the owner, the
Absolutely.
landlord says yes.
Absolutely.
And then all those people would have lower rents, or they wouldn't be having to pay so much utility bills, and you'd accomplish the same economic
Absolutely.
goals.
Yes.
So why
Yes,
not
yes, and
start
yes.
with apartment complexes
I-
where there are a lot of low-income renters?
I think this is some
Or
of the
trailer
detail
parks.
that will happen in these conversations. This is exactly right. The first step was a 1.5-year conversation with Harvey Mudd, because most people were saying this technology sounds too good to be true, we don't even understand it, right? And quite frankly, it's fairly complicated. But now that we've solved whether the technology is real piece, and the next piece is to raise the money for the factory, to get that factory going and demonstrable, right? That panels are actually coming off the factory, UL approved, because the UL approval process is based on the factory and not a panel. It's the factory that's producing those panels that actually gets approved. So the next step is to figure out what is the best deployment mechanism for low to middle income households, and that sounds like a great one. We're just completely open to that, and that is one of the ways that you could help us in terms of the committee of advisors in what are the mechanics of the best way to deploy this citywide. Because we're agnostic about that right now, we're just open. Yeah, great idea.
But that's where I think
Actually.
dealing with the 2 school districts, both Claremont and Pomona, would be very helpful to you, because you have a huge base of family in these
Yes.
school districts. that
Yes,
you would
and I think through
directly
feedback, we'll be able
communicate
to, yes,
through. Yeah.
I think that's a really good
And they could
idea.
also be disseminator of information if they would choose to do that, so.
The
You know,
first question
my
you
first
asked
question,
was,
yeah.
what's the guarantee? There is no guarantee. We have not built the factory yet,
Yeah.
right? This is the vision. So some people are choosing simply to do a charitable donation, like Don Gould and these other foundations, so they can write off the donation. Some people are choosing, well, I think I'll go ahead and invest because I believe at some point this is going to happen. One of the things that makes, because I'm feeling a lot of personal responsibility, in this, obviously. One of the things that makes it seem a little bit more feasible for me is that I went up to Fremont, California, San Jose actually, and actually personally helped them make the six prototype panels, which is the 4th generation, but I actually physically helped make those panels. There's about 8 components to a solar panel. It's relatively simple. And so if we have 10 people that are pre-purchasing systems, that's 160 panels that we have to make. So I believe we're going to start the factory. I believe we're going to get a grant to roll that thing out. And I believe that we're going to make at least 160 panels. That's kind of how I'm looking at it, right? So, but I am not telling anybody that anything at this point is guaranteed. Yeah.
I too am excited about this, Devon. I'm wondering what you would say about the logistics challenge that you have in your vision of going into a low-income community and getting whole blocks of people, to renters and owners, to come aboard to be able to do that. It just seems to me that the logistics of pulling that all together are immense. So that's one
yes.
question. And then
Okay.
a related one is this. If you could, and I really appreciate what you have said, but what do you see as major challenges? What's the downside of this? Say something about the risk. Where might you falter in this wonderful plan? If you could be candid on that, what are the biggest hurdles that you are yet facing?
On your first piece, I think it's literally the biggest problem, the biggest challenge is the community engagement piece. So that's one of the things that we've been working on with CHERP over the last 8 years now. So for example, for our 50 home challenge in South Claremont, we developed a South Claremont steering committee of neighbors down in that area who were intimately involved with that neighborhood and have an investment, emotional and economic investment there. I'm imagining that we will probably do something on a similar level, is that we'll have steering committees from various neighborhoods to help us coordinate with ideas like what Lissa is coming up with, to be able to explain this opportunity. Because you're right, and this is why I think community engagement is the key every time. That is that people are very mistrustful, all of us are, about new technology and about, especially something free being offered to us. We don't even know which new LED light bulb to buy, for gosh sakes, right? Because, we've all had the experience of you bought the last LED light bulb 3 years ago and it's already burned out, that it's supposed to last 50,000 years, right? So we're all a little bit, confused about how to move forward. And so that's why I think the community engagement and education and constant conversation is really the only way forward in those kind of things. And in terms of, what can go bump in the night, we have to create a factory. We have to have all of these working pieces coming together. So building a business from scratch, I've already done that once. This is going to be a less complicated from a technical perspective than building a $2 million house. Building a solar panel is pretty simple, right? But the complication is the politics, I think, right? Creating these panels and iterating the panels. There's going to be bumps along the way in terms of what's working and what's not working and what could work better as we go forward. But we're already at the generation 4 and 5 of the panels and the controller card. So I'm pretty sure that this thing is going to work. It's just how well is it going to work? That's my question, right? So I stay up at night thinking about how do we coordinate intellectually disabled workshops with at-risk youth at the CTEC program over at the Pomona Fairgrounds. And all the things that I'm thinking about in terms of the moving parts comes back to the biggest challenge is the coordination, community engagement aspect.
If I might just add, I think that what Devon left out, and I think probably wisely for getting to the point today, was that all of the players that he just mentioned were contacted over 2 years ago to be part of the rollout, so that the educational piece, the at least initial employment piece, are all taking advantage of existing expertise that is in the community and already on board with moving this project forward, because it is a win-win. It's a win for their clients, it's a win for what they're already doing, and they just simply, again, need the door to open, and for that first rent to be placed on the factory, for it to get built, and then, again, although obviously, as Devon has mentioned, getting the skepticism, the healthy skepticism, and given the marketplace as it is, even with respect to solar, we have to live with the bad players that are out there, because this one is even a more grandiose promise than all of the others put together, that we really do have to overcome that. And that's why I think the people in these rooms, with the reputations that they bring and their belief and in my case, certainty that this is going to work, I think is what will, again, coalesce the community around it, even in those communities that are reluctant to, I think, believe that this could be possible.
So we're at 5:30. I think everybody's had, in terms of time, I think we're out. Once again, there's two asks. For example, I'll just use you as an example, Alyssa. Claremont is full of ideas. And we've been talking about environmental things for years and years and years. And we, at this group, CLGP and Sustainable Claremont, are determined to act right now and get this done. So one of the things that we need in terms of coming away from meetings like this that we could use is things like your idea. I think is a spectacular idea. I would love it if people have those ideas, if you could contact me and let me know if you're willing to help me think this through. I need help. I need you to help me kind of make this real. We could go to these apartment owners and start these discussions immediately, along with our conversations with the city of Pomona. So I need people to step up and volunteer to take over to fill in some of these pieces that are yet happening on the community engagement piece. And I need you to consider really helping with the dollars. So I'm going to be doing community coffees like this probably once a week for the next 3 or 4 weeks. We'll re-invite you to these. Please call me with questions. This is all I'm doing these days. So I would love to entertain questions.
I have a really simple question.
Yeah.
I think this is really exciting. I think it's important. I think there are very few things that we as individuals can do that may make a difference. And I think this really may. And so my question is, should the check be made out to CHERP? Is that right?
Sure. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's what I can answer, yes. Thank you, Sally.
What if you already have a solar city involved on your roof? And you want to get a $10,000 system?
Okay, but this is an interesting question. If you already have solar panels on your roof, these panels, one of the cool things about the technology is that they're interoperable with existing systems. So if you want to extend your system, augment your system, these will work with your existing system depending on the size of your inverter and other things, but these will work with existing systems.
Do we know if Solar City allows?
Depends on, do you have a lease? Do you have a PPA?
Lease, yeah.
A lease, okay. So it depends on a few things. We could talk about that, right, in terms of what your contract looks like. I'm not sure, but I bet they don't have a contract with you that would preclude you from having another set of panels on your roof doing more. I don't know why they would be able to do that.
They might want us to guarantee that they get the business for it.
Maybe, but we could take a look at that. It's an interesting, yeah. Thank you all, please.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.
Oh, good. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Challenge.
Open for suggestions. Okay, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, call me.
Thank you.
All right?
I'm gonna send this video to Monday.
Well, I was looking around.